do us a quick favor, guys. Hit the follow, subscribe button. Share this with someone who would benefit from it. And help us grow, as the more we grow, the better the episodes we'll get. Thanks, guys, for helping us. And let's get into the episode.
So there's so many things God teaches you through that dirty work. Like you said, my results are my fault, good and bad. So many people can't accept that. They'll say, oh, my family did this, or I did this, or the person at work's not helping me, or the bank shut down my loan, I can't get it. And they'll blame all these people. You say the buck stops and starts with me. And that's what God can use. You can't change 300 people, but you can change yourself. So for me, and what I'm doing, it helps with, okay, have faith, have a power higher than yourself, whether that's God, whatever you believe in. I don't force anything like that, but I trust God, and then I go to work on myself with my mindset. Because if you can have that freedom of you're not worried about other people's opinions, you're not worried about what people think about you, you have something to fall back on with the love of Christ. You can live in this freedom of like, kind of like being in your sweatpants, like, okay, I'm cool, I'm comfortable, like I can actually do what I want to do, I can go after my dreams, I can go after my goals, and I'm not held back by other people's opinions. So what it does is it shows people how to have faith, and have faith in yourself, and just live that freedom of you get one life, you have to do it for you, and you have to believe in yourself.
And he's here, he is here. Cristiano has entered the building. Welcome, wherever you are, to the Old Trafford Theatre.
Yes, guys, welcome back to this episode of the SCULPTED Podcast. Today, we are joined by Jeff Vulpis. And Jeff is someone who I came across on Instagram. I really like the work that he does. And I was really keen to get him onto an episode. I saw that his journey and the things that he learned resonated with me quite a lot. I also see a similar mindset in Jeff to myself, which of course, this is what SCULPTED is about. So there's a few things that I really want to get this episode kicked underway. And Jeff, if you don't mind giving a bit of a quick intro to who you are and what you do to our listeners, that would be awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored to be here. My name is Jeff Vulpis. I'm a mindset coach. And a little bit about me, I started my journey with Tim Grover in 2018. I was mentored by him. I ended up going to build my speaking and coaching business. I lived in a car for 2 years, pushed through that, wrote my book, put on my first conference, and that's what I do now.
Amazing. I mean, just hearing Tim Grover in your life is crazy. Tim Grover is someone who the SCULPTED Podcast kind of wasn't. I don't like using the word inspired. Many people should know that. I've made a whole video on inspiration and things like that, but it's the perfect word here, right? He set a standard and you were able to follow. For him being your mentor, Tim Grover is someone who you could say he's a mentor for me as well, but I would say not a direct mentor. I would love that. But if you look a few years ago, I was sending emails to him, trying to get onto him. And I said, one day I want to get onto Tim Grover. And now I have a podcast, which is every 2 weeks, I have an episode where I'm going through Relentless, my first copy of Relentless. Yes, I have multiple because I read through it every 3 months. I read through it. It's got so much writing on it. Tim Grover has set a standard for me that I want to follow. So even hearing that, you've got that connection with him, for even our listeners, it's powerful. And a criteria that I have for anyone who I work with on this podcast, for co-hosts, for example, my other co-hosts who can't join us today, by the way, but the criteria was, have you read Relentless? Have you read Winning? It's just criteria for me that if you want to be working with me, you have to see that this comes from somewhere, and if you need to adapt this, because if you don't have this, it won't work. And for someone who's like me, if you want to work with me, you have to have this. So anyways, that was a little bit of a side note. Now,
No, real quick, if it's okay
Yeah.
if I say something. So Tim was very gracious in what he's done for my life. So, I mean, I thank God for that. I told Tim that Jesus saved my soul and Tim saved my life, because the thing about Relentless is when you have a certain mindset, and just like you're saying, different in life. So Relentless made me feel I wasn't crazy. It was the aha moment. For a mindset, Relentless is like the mindset Bible. It shows you what to do, how to think, you know what I'm saying? Like all this stuff, how to trust your instincts. I think it's the end all be all with personal development books. And I think that it will always be in its own league. And I think everybody should read Relentless and then Winning, because it'll change your life instantaneously.
Very well said, Jeff. Very well said. And to add to that is, I'm always in a bit of conflict when talking about Relentless and how much of an impact it's made in my life, because I don't want to say it's a Bible, because that's kind of blasphemous. So, but it's the only real word that I can explain it to.
Yeah.
It's, for me, of course, I also read the Bible every single day, but
Me too.
calling Relentless a Bible, it's not a religious Bible. It's a mindset Bible, if that makes sense.
Right, like a blueprint. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we definitely see eye to eye there, which is great. And also, because you are religious yourself, you read the Bible every day, like myself, right? This is where we see it aligning, even with our faith, right? I think that when we spoke before as well, how it's not even just about how hard you're working. Like, you should be working hard for your plans that God has for you, which is really important itself. You shouldn't be sitting back. God actually wants you to work hard. There's actually a Bible verse, I think in Ephesians. I recently was speaking to a friend about it, and he was kind of challenging me on, and I really loved the conversation that we had. He was challenging me on, am I seeing my goals as my version of God without, like, he challenged it to me because he was having his goals and ambition as his God whilst neglecting God himself. And he was challenging me on this, which I really appreciated. But I realized that I was kind of putting words to my reasoning. And I was saying, well, no, God is always there for me. The reason why I'm doing it is for God. And so whatever I do, I'm doing it in the glory of God. And that's really important to me and to sculpting myself, because I think that, and the episode that I sent to you, how religion is so important for sculpting, is because I actually think it's a core pillar of sculpting. Because if you aren't taking religion seriously, I think even a debate nowadays is people talking about just the principles of religion. Even if you're just a principled religion, not religious, but you're a principled person in religion, there's benefit to it. Now, I'm not saying that's a good way of doing it, but
right,
there is benefit to it, which is really important.
100%. And even like what you said, I just had this conversation with my brother yesterday. I said, because I was like, God put me here to do this. I know what I'm doing. And a lot of people are like, oh, money's bad, this and that. I said, money's not bad. I'm not loving money. I love God, but I use my gifts to get that money to buy the time to go be able to speak in front of people. I take my gifts seriously, my goals seriously. And I think that that's what so many people miss out on, is that, like, when God gives you a vision, the same way he gives you free will to pick to sin or not sin, he gives you free will to say, hey, I gave you these gifts, pick up your blessings or don't pick up your blessings. And I think so many people are just like, well, if God wants it to be, it's going to be. God does want it to be. That's why he gave you the gifts and he gave you the drive. And there's tons of Bible verses, like it talks about in Proverbs, that basically, like, lazy hands lead to poverty. God wants you out there making moves. That's why he put the gifts in you, not to sit there and lay dormant and just hope it happens someday. So it's a great mindset you have with that.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. I do like that, where and if we think about this on such a sophisticated level, what is money? Money is actually something that humans have inherently put value on. If you take the value of our perceived perception of money, it's just a piece of paper, right? So what are we actually working for? We are working for a perception of value. Now, that value for us is in glory of God. For other people, that value is for external collaboration or for external approval. The reason why we may want money or success or accomplishment is not because the piece of paper is the most beautiful piece of paper in the world. In fact, that piece of paper changes in every single place around the world. It's that we value it, and the things that we value bring a collaborative experience. But what we value is the collaborative experience with God, and that's what we value, I think, the most.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and there's such a freedom to trust God with that. It is a fact of, you know, when you're going to put your gifts and your goals in, and we'll get into this, but just to, like, start it off, you know, being a Christian, you may be like, well, you know, how is this going to happen? How is that going to happen? And, you know, sometimes when you come out of poverty, like I did, you have a mindset of like, how can I go make that happen? How this, how that? And I go back to where God walks on streets of gold, so there is no lack. So he will provide a way for you if we keep him first. And that's the thing of like, I'm not doing this for cars, for houses, for this. I have the security of I am accepted by God. I don't need those cars, those houses and everything. But I'm not here to be broken in poverty. I'm here to change the world. And like you said, money's just a piece of paper, but money's a tool, because if I have X amount of money, I take it and put over here. My time is now free. I now have complete freedom to use my gifts. So it's a great point that you made.
Yeah, I love that a lot. I love it a lot. And as I said, we'll get into it a little bit more. But the 10 quick fire questions I've got for you, Jeff. All right. What are your top 3 songs on your workout playlist, or just your top 3 songs?
November Rain by Guns N' Roses, Animals, House of the Rising Sun, and there's got to be some Jadakiss in there.
Classics. All right. I love it. Also, feel free to pass any of these. What is one piece of advice that you'd give someone looking on to improve their mindset as the mindset fitness coach?
Dedication. You have to be dedicated. You have to be dedicated to your faith. You have to be dedicated to yourself. You have to be dedicated to keep other people's opinions out of your way.
Brilliant. All right. Your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you in alignment with where you want to go daily?
Tim Grover, crave the results so intensely the work becomes irrelevant.
I love that. All right. Your morning ritual that you swear by every single day. Now, you do have a morning routine that I assume, because you did tell me before when we were talking about when we're going to plan the episode that you get the morning done with, and then the rest you've got free. So go into that.
Yeah. So it's wake up. I try not to look at my phone. I pray. I meditate. I read Jesus Calling, Jesus is Love, the both by Sarah Young books. I read the Bible, certain things, and then I read Proverbs every day, and then I'll start with something for like your mindset, and then I'll start the day.
That's beautiful. Amazing. All right. If you could have dinner with anyone, living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Of course, Christ. But second place would be, it's a toss-up between Donald Trump and Master P, because both of them are huge mentors for me. So probably them. I'm going to take 3 people. Christ, Donald Trump, and Master P. Yeah.
That's a crazy table. I don't want to be there. If you don't mind it.
Yeah. I will. And you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Party of.
All right. Okay, well, I think I already know the answer to the next one. What book has had the biggest impact on your mindset and personal growth?
Well, of course, the Bible, number 1, and Relentless. For a human role book, Relentless and Winning. It's a 1-2 knockout combo that they kind of go together. It's kind of like that value pack that you buy. Like they go together.
100%. All right. Favorite movie?
Clueless.
Okay.
Yeah. That's an old school classic. That and Gladiator. So complete polar opposite.
Yeah. Nice. What one word best describes your coaching style? Now, use 1 or 2 if you want. 1 word's a little bit tough.
Realness.
I like it. Okay. Very good. Who is your closest ally?
That's a tough one, man. I have so many of them that go in so many different groups, because I feel like you have to put people in the group that they specialize in and play to their strengths. So I doubt about that one. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Tough. Yeah.
That's tough.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer in itself. I think that's a good thing, actually. All right. Part 1, which is talking about the mindset and faith. Now, the first kind of question that I want to go for you, Jeff, is your personal journey with Christ. How did that shape your mindset, your vision, everything like that? And in the first place, maybe you can even talk about how you got to that point, because I'm sure that's a journey itself.
Yeah. So 100%. So I'm Italian. So being Italian, you're instantly pushed into the Catholic mob. You're Catholic, whether you like it or not. So I was grew up Catholic and stuff, and a lot about what you talk about the structure of, a religion. I love the fact, okay, you go to church today, hear about Christ. So I started to see the love of God being Catholic. But then when I was 11, I went through a lot of hell. When I was 7, I went through a lot of hell. So up to my younger years, as I was becoming a teenager, I went through a lot. And at 15, I was ready to break down. And I was at a Josh McDowell concert, and he was talking about the love of Christ and accepting Christ as your savior. And I did that, and I got baptized. And actually, within like 8 months later, I did a couple sermons in front of the church. I got involved heavy in the youth group, and it really led me to walk with Christ. Interestingly, because a year later in high school, I had premarital sex and was asked to leave the church. So that was a huge part of the journey, because it told me that God is forgiveness and nobody speaks for God. God has the living word, which is the Bible. He can speak for himself. So it not only did it show me religion and God, but it showed me so many times people try to step in front and say what their version of God is telling them when God can speak for himself. So that was a huge part of trusting, of like, I feel abandonment, getting kicked out of the church. And God said, come to me, follow me. I'll never abandon you. I'll never leave you or forsake you. So that was a huge part at 16 of my walk with Christ that led so much into where I am now. And sorry, I forgot this second part of the question.
So you've kind of talked about how that shaped your initial life, right? So then the second part of the question is, how is that now shaping your mission now with what the work you're doing?
So that's a great second part of the question. So it's my way of giving back. It's my way of helping people. And it's good because I feel that if you can shape your mindset to positivity, because we live in such a negative world that we're trained to be negative, we're trained to live in fear. And if we're thinking about being positive, the news and all the garbage around us will gladly push us back the other way to negativity. So for me, and when I'm doing it, helps with, okay, have faith, have a power higher than yourself, whether that's God, whatever you believe in. I don't force anything on anybody, but I trust God, and then I go to work on myself with my mindset. Because if you can have that freedom of, you're not worried about other people's opinions, you're not worried about what people think about you, you have something to fall back on with the love of Christ. You can live in this freedom of like, kind of like being in your sweatpants, like, okay, I'm cool, I'm comfortable, like I can actually do what I want to do. I can go after my dreams, I can go after my goals, and I'm not held back by other people's opinions. So what it does is it shows people how to have faith, then have faith in yourself, and just live that freedom of, you get one life, you have to do it for you, and you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that kind of hit me just then was, you talked about the freedom part. Now, something that I heard, well, I didn't hear recently, but it hit me recently when I was listening to a worship song. And I can't quote it exactly, but essentially the lesson from that is that what do I need to gain when I already have everything, right? What is everything to us? It's a relationship with God. So what is anything more than that? Is it more money? Okay, that's nice. It may help me spread my mission, as we've said. But what is that? Well, it's nothing. I can't take that with me to heaven. It is a piece of paper that's valued by people around me. And that hit me there. And I think that kind of is also what you were talking about there a little bit. Now, it's interesting that your faith journey in itself was challenged in that sense, right? I think it's a very important part of a religious journey for anyone to be challenged. When I spoke about this in my episode, I'm worried because I haven't been challenged. Now, maybe that's my mindset. Maybe I have been challenged. I mean, I've chose a very difficult path. Now, Jeff, maybe you don't know too much about my journey in football, and I don't expect you to at all, because it's a very big journey, complicated, but I'll briefly explain it. And I left my family at the age of 15 to play in Germany by myself, and I returned back to Australia because of COVID. I was way too young to live in a country where I didn't know the language, and living in COVID times was not the best. So then at 17, I moved back to Germany to pursue the football dream. And then now I'm 19 and I've just moved to Budapest, and I have no connections here. I'm literally forging for myself. The money, everything like this, I'm forging for myself. My parents support me. I love my parents. They're the best. They let me do this. People might think that I have a bad relationship with my parents because I left at such an early age. Now, these challenges and obstacles I chose to do. This has been a blessing for me that I've even been able to do this. Now, this might be my challenge, but I'm worried that there's going to be so much more ahead of me, because I haven't been persecuted for my religion. I never have. But I also want to be an example for people. And that's something that I see. In today's society, we have a lot of people who are promoting degeneracy and a lot of evilness in this world. And there is, of course, good, but I don't see it as much. And something that I really want, and I have a vision for myself, is being a beacon. That takes time. And I also think that if I focus on my professional football, then as a byproduct, my influence will be a beacon. So kind of what we were talking about with the money thing, I value professional football. I think that if I become the best footballer in the world, I then can become a beacon for God. If I don't become a professional footballer, then being that beacon to more people will be more difficult to attain, if that makes sense. So even for my vision and myself, when I think about what my next 5 moves are on the chessboard, I've realized that every single move that I'm making is in glory of God. And that's I think, an interesting thing, which I think you can also resonate with quite a lot there.
How do you not feel you've been challenged when you trusted God to step out at that? That's crazy. Nobody would do that. That's an incredible story. I knew a little bit about it, but not the 15-year-old part. Like, that was faith right there, because God told you something and you stepped out, and you have been challenged. Because if you read the Bible before anything, the crucifixion, Friday it looked dark, Saturday it looked dark, Sunday he rose again. The girl, she was dead. Jesus said, "Get out of the room. She's just asleep." He kicked people out of the room because they laughed when he said she's just asleep. So he got the doubters out. Lazarus was completely dead for 3 days. He raised him. At 15, and I'm going to say this very respectfully, I was born in 1983. That was the crack cocaine drug epidemic, and we grew up fast. And 15 then is not 15 now. And for you to do that in this generation at that age, when there's so much social media and everything's so magnified, every decision is turned 16 different ways. You trusted God at that age. You went out there, you made it happen. You said, "I'm going to step out. God's walking with me wherever I go. So God and I are going to walk together through this mission, and God will give you all the resources." You have been challenged, but your challenge was from step one, will you trust me? So you were challenged. A lot of people look at challenges in a negative way, like, "Oh, Satan's trying to beat the crap out of me today," which I've had happen plenty of times. But your challenge was God saying, "Will you trust me?" That's a challenge as a human being. That's a challenge. God is so different for us with a loving relationship, and he holds our hand, but he still gives us free will. So he told you, "Will you trust me?" And you did. So you have been challenged, but in a positive way. That's amazing.
Yeah. I haven't thought about it in that way. So that's,
You just need to talk the rest of the podcast. You need to talk about the rest of the podcast. You have the story. Do you know, like, with you going to do the football, and with you trusting God, and with you saying, "Look, I love my parents. I'm leaving for better and what God has for me for my mission." And you're like a prodigy, because to know at that young age and to go after it, when so many people wait, and they'll be like, "Oh, when I get out of college, or when I do this, or when I get some money saved, or when I get a car, or when I get $10,000 to go and do this trip." But you were just like, "I trust you, God. I'm moving with you." That's amazing. So you have been challenged, but you stepped up. To step up at such a young age, believe in yourself, and be confident, that's amazing. Congratulations, man. You really, I don't want to say inspired, because I know how you feel about inspired, but, and I don't want to say motivated, because that's entry level, but I admire what you're doing on a Christian level, on a man level, on a world level, and a world changer level. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
I appreciate you even saying that and enlightening me on my own. I guess the lack of awareness, but also I do think that I was aware, but I appreciate that a lot. So yeah,
you're welcome. And it's not that you're not aware. I'm going to tell you this too, I just turned 40, so I'm big time older than you, but as a warrior doing what you're doing, if I could just tell you this, just like real quick, you're making so many big, powerful moves that it's easy just to kind of be in the game. It's almost like when you play football, right? You're like, you don't know you're sweaty because you're just in the game. You're sweating, you're making all these moves, you're making all these kicks, passing, doing all that, scoring goals. So when you go to step out and really live for Christ, when you go to step out and really live your dream, you don't have a normal life. You have almost this warrior life of like all these big battles you overcome, and all these times you trusted God, and all these major doors that open for you that just become normal. Like you leaving at 15 is incredible. And you're 19 now, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep that warrior mindset, but also give yourself grace to say, "Hey, I'm proud of myself for, trusting God. I'm thankful to God, but I'm proud of myself for stepping up and make that decision to do this." So don't get numb to the major moves that you're making, because it'll improve your walk with Christ it'll let you build on your belief with yourself, because you're going to have major belief just leaving at 15. Just you stepping out there, even if you just walk down the block, you're like, oh, I still went for it, but I changed my mind. But you didn't. You said, I'm going here, I'm going there. So don't get numb to the fact of those major moves that you're making. Trust God, but also be proud of yourself so you can keep building on that and build relationships with yourself, saying, I've done this at 15, I've done this at 19. So when I hit 21, it's a regular Tuesday, let's go, And so don't lose that, because you're making major moves that I don't think you fully see, which is a good thing. You're not scared, but you're making these major moves that you need to be proud of yourself, because you're going to change the world, but it starts with moves like you made at 15.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. And when I do, now not to the level or extent that we've talked about, but when I do reflect and see where God's worked in my life, it's typically after a period. So when I think about just now, I moved to Budapest. This move to Budapest, if I gave you full context of why I moved to Budapest, you might call me insane, but I don't think you would. But people who are seeing me for the first time or hearing their backstory, I've been told that it's a silly move, but I've done it. And when I look and reflect on these moments, now going into this move to Budapest, I could have thought, it's not going to work. All of these different things. Now with a bit more awareness around it, and now even with us putting it to the extent that we have now I do really see that, okay, maybe this is the step that I should take. Maybe I'll be rewarded for it, but I'm also okay that if it's not what I need, if it isn't the reward that I was expecting, I don't know the plans that God's got for me. I could be injured in a year's time. I could never play football again in a year's time. I don't know what God's got for me, but I trust that the plan that He's put in front of me, that I feel inherently like I need to take, is the right path. And that allows me to relax. And when I have that level of trust, I'm not worrying about things. And that's what I think is really important in being someone who has a faith, I think. I don't have that worry that if anyone else was in my shoes who wasn't faithful, they would be worrying, I think. I don't need to worry. I know that if I'm working as hard as I can, the man upstairs has got me covered.
That's amazing. And that you don't realize what you're saying now. I don't want to say it's such a young age, because age is just a number, but how mature you are with your walk and your faith and where you're going, God's going to magnify and bless, because it's like you with football, a penalty kick for the World Cup. Imagine that pressure. As big as that goal is, people are looking at the audience, they're thinking the camera, they're thinking what I'm doing is going to be shown forever on ESPN, on the internet, on this, on that. But you walk up with that clarity and you're like, man, that goal is so big and I'm going to kick it right there in the corner. And you just walk up and you go and you kick it. That football player has amazing power because he has calmness, he has clarity, he has belief, versus the guy that's up there shaking and don't want to kick it and kicks it way to the side. So God's going to be able to use all of that, because for you to have that knowledge so young in your journey, it's going to be nothing but blessings, because God's able to build on that. That's where He tries to get. Believe me, I've walked with several people. That's where God tries to get you, where He can use you at your best. And really, He talks about being a potter and put you on that wheel, and He can really mold what you wanted, what He wants you to do and where He wants to take you, because you have that clarity at such a young age. There's something I want to talk to you about off camera. Remind me.
Right. I'll make sure to take you up on that.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the next kind of topic is, well, actually, kind of point in this vein is, we've talked about how our journeys, how we see it, and things like that. But now we did kind of briefly touch on this when we're talking about how we want to keep working for the glory of God. But how is your interpretation of the Bible and the teaching in it shaped how you act for your mindset? And when I think about it, for the reason why I wake up wanting to, I say, conquer the world, it's just because it sounds brilliant, but really it's I want to become the best, because I know that I can then share God's glory. How is your teachings and interpretation shape the actions that you take?
So from the Bible, because I thought the first part,
yeah.
Okay, so I look at it as this. I wake up the exact same way. I want to conquer the world. And here's the thing that I say, okay, let me look at and I look at it from a very different way, and God really opened my eyes. There's a couple different things that God showed me to create this mindset. So I wake up and say, God loved me, and he gave his only son for me, John 3:16. So his only son. I don't have any kids yet, but I couldn't imagine giving a cat, a dog, anything, let alone a son. So I said, he valued everything for me. So right there, as a Christian, if God gave everything for me, how can I come and half it today? How can I come and just whatever? So what that taught me was appreciate the day in God's gift, what he gave me, number one. Number two, the Bible gave me faith of God calmed the sea. God raised people from the dead. God raised himself from the dead. God made blind people see this, that. Okay, have faith in what I'm doing. Have faith that there's no goal too big, kind of like what you're doing. And then when I go through those rough times, I read in Matthew, I think it's 7, where it talks about Jesus calmed the sea. And in those 6 sentences, if you read those 6 sentences where Jesus calmed the sea is life. God got into the boat. So what does that mean? God goes ahead of us. The disciples followed him. We followed God. They got into the boat. Suddenly, the waves came up. Well, when you go out to accomplish your dreams, suddenly something will happen. So what happened? Jesus was asleep. Well, what do you have to do to be sleeping? You have to be relaxed. So God's relaxed because God knows what the end is. He knows how he's taking care of you. What did the disciples do? What do? We freaked out. Oh, this is why I shouldn't have done it. Let me go on social media. Let me call 5 people. Let me think about all the ways it won't work. No, they ran and woke up Jesus. What did Jesus say? You have little faith. Why don't you believe in me? You saw me raise people from the dead, this and that. He got up and he calmed the sea, and the disciples were shocked. They said, who is this that the waves and the wind listen to this man? So the Bible taught me 3 things. Value today, because God gave his son for me. He gave everything for me. Know that in Proverbs and everywhere, God wants you to be abundant and a world changer and have faith. And then when times get rough, know that God's going to calm the sea. You'll be in the boat in those rough waves, but God will not let you drown, so to speak. He has your back. So those 3 things.
I really like how you've mentioned there that you're something that I talk about, and I've come to realize more and more, is how privileged I am. And when I talk about privilege, I'm not just talking about, for the food on my plate. I'm just so privileged that I can even afford to speak to you right now, Jeff. All of these different things, I'm so privileged. And when I think about taking advantage of my privilege, what that looks like is lying on my bed the whole day. Taking things for granted that someone in my position trying to live for the glory of God wouldn't do. And when I think about that, it like almost offends me, even thinking of the possibility of not acting in the glory of God and everything that I should do. Even if I don't think about it in the moment when I'm, when I'm editing the podcast for this episode, I won't be thinking in the moment that I'm doing this for God. But in its essence, all of the things that I'm doing, the conversations that we have are for the glory of God. And when I'm working as hard as I can, then I think this is when we have that perfect combination. And that's what I think we've kind of talked about there.
Yeah. And that's so true. Like, God's going to bless whatever you do. You hear he blessed the woman with the 2 pennies, the 5 loaves and 2 fish. God will bless whatever you do. So it's almost like investing. It's like, if you're going to double everything that I do and 10 times everything I do, wouldn't I want to put down the biggest investment I had so it can be magnified? Well, don't you want to put everything into the day so God can magnify it and you can really see your potential?
Yeah. Very powerful. I like that a lot. And that kind of goes into the topic of the one that I sent to you, that we all have the same 24 hours. How are we maximizing our 24 hours? And when we think about how do you get the highest return on investment of what you're giving, I think it'd be silly not to invest in a relationship with God, because I talk about working smarter and harder. I even, just before we started this episode, I was speaking to my dad about how for the SCULPTED app, I'm trying to work smarter and harder. In everything that I do, I don't think it's about working smarter than harder. It's doing it in combination. And when I'm working in combination I'm working smarter, because I know that my relationship with God is going to 10x the work that I do. I'm working smarter and harder, which I think is a perfect combination.
That is a perfect combination. That's a great point.
Yeah. Okay. I want to shift on to your passion for that. Also, I don't like using the word passion. I actually have a vocabulary of all the words that I don't want to use and the words that I do want to use. And I call it the sculpted vocabulary. I want to make a book on it one day where it's just a sculpted dictionary, and it's it's on the table. And then, you know, everyone who wants to think like me, they can just read up the sculpted book and they see passion, the true meaning of passion. That's an idea I've got. But in this case, passion for its most raw sense, you do have a passion for wrestling. And you explained to me how you weren't a wrestler yourself, but you do love watching wrestling. So
obsessed
okay
with wrestling. Yeah.
I like that word. That word goes hand in hand with a lot of my passions. But yes.
Right.
Okay. Let's go into the wrestling and what do you see? Now for me, playing football, there's so many parallels with life lessons and different things like that. What have you seen a direct parallel between wrestling and life lessons? Have you been able to, as a viewer, as somebody who's been involved in it, what do you see the most direct parallels are in life lessons and wrestling?
That's a great question. So I'm mainly obsessed with the wrestling, like the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson, up until like The Rock and Stone Cold. So back in those days, there was no social media. There was no this and that. You had to go out and you had to follow your dream, and you had to get in a car and you had to drive 300 miles for $20, and you were losing money almost every day, but you were ascending to the top if you did it right, and you were learning and mastering your craft, and you were paying your dues, and you were connecting with people. So it was the social media before social media. And what I learned is I learned dedication, because a lot of them had amazing bodies, and I got bullied a lot at home, in certain situations, and in school. So I had to learn, like, geez, look at how they make their bodies look. Nobody messes with them. So as a kid, I was like, oh my God, it was like a Superman. But then as an adult, it was, we got to get up off the mat when you get knocked down. We have to pay our dues. Sometimes we're putting in all this work and we don't see the results, and then we get that big break. Well, that's a lot like wrestling. They would go in these little territories and wrestle in front of 30 people for $20 and you know, get nothing. And then all of a sudden, bam, they get their break and they're off and running and making millions of dollars. So it was so much I learned of, you have to pay your dues. You have to get up off the mat. You have to believe in yourself. People are going to call you crazy. You got to keep putting the work in, and the break will come. I learned how to brand myself. I learned how you look matters. And again, I say that not like, you know, oh, I'm worried, insecure and everything, but no, the way you're walking around is your business card. If you can afford a, you know, good shirt, put on a good shirt. If you can do cardio, walking is free. If you can walk. Like, it made me decisions to say I have to eat right, I have to exercise, I have to do this. So it sparked so many positive things of every day is a challenge. You know what I'm saying? And also it showed me, like, they go out and they master their craft, and then they go out and perform it in front of thousands of people. So, I mean, there were so many things as a kid, as a speaker, as you just need to get inspired of, look at how it parallels with wrestling. I'm sure with football, there's challenges. As soon as you get the ball in your hand, everybody's trying to, as soon as you get the ball, like trying to kick it, everybody's trying to get you. So it's the same thing with life. As soon as you get a goal, everybody's trying to get you. And you're like, how? People's opinions, here they come. Spiritually, opposition will come. People in the race with you don't want to see you win. They'll come. So it's so many different things how sports in general parallels life.
I really like I think it's even an analogy in itself that you kind of said there with wrestling. Get knocked down, get up again. And that's a cliche saying in itself, but it's a direct parallel. And I think that's also very important. And I think with wrestling, now I don't know too much about wrestling, but I did like how you kind of explained how the work that no one sees, which is, for example, the people, the wrestlers who are, you know, investing in their journey, spending all this money on making it happen. And then when they get to the top, people just think that they've always been there. And that's something that I was speaking with my co-host last night about with his business. He's told me quite personal details on how much he's investing into it and to where he sees it. But what he's always exclaimed to me is that it's not about now. I will do the work now. I will do all that's necessary, but he knows that he has to do all of the dirty work now to reap the rewards later. And I think that also this has parallel into the teachings of the Bible. When we think about all of these different biblical stories, there's always a story arc. And quite often it's uncomfortable. And when people think of religion, they think typically it's all blossoms and rainbows. They think it's all beautiful, but no, there's beauty in suffering. There's beauty in solitude, and what people don't realize is that on the other side of results is the sacrifice and the consequence of living a hard life. And I think that there's power in that, because the results lie on the other side. So if you are okay with being uncomfortable, then you're also okay with the results. And a phrase that I've also started to use more is my results, my fault, good or bad. So the results that you see, both good and bad, like this haircut, for example, bad, but that's my
No, it
fault.
looks good.
I do it myself. But there's everything that you see in front of me, from the clothes that I wear, from the way I present myself, it's my doing, and I take responsibility for that. But when I know that I can also bear the consequences of a bad result, then that gives me more freedom to what we were talking about before, the free will that God gives us. And a very common debate that people give Christians or Catholic people is that, why does God give us free will? Well, the reason why we have free will is so that we can decide. And what people always say, why is there evil in the world? And people say, without evil there's no good, but it's also that we have free will to decide. If everyone was, not going through the consequences, or if they weren't suffering, then there's no way of separation. There's no way of drawing closer to God. It's imperfection that actually drives a perfection, the pursuit of perfection, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And those are such great points. And another thing, is that when you'll do the dirty work, like me, when I was living in that car and I was having to get up at 4:30 and 5 o'clock every morning to start my day, people ask me now, how do you get up at 5 o'clock every morning? I said, how do I get up at 5 o'clock how do I get up at 5 o'clock every morning when I'm in a bed? Because I did it in a car. And what happens is God will prepare you through that dirty work to rule the kingdom, the throne, so to speak, that you're trying to sit in. Because when I get that spot with speaking and coaching, and yes, I want to change the world, but I'm coming for that spot for 40, 45, 50 years. It's not a little 6-month run and then I'll go do something else. I want to be the next, speaker in that spot, because I take it seriously. But I never came to be number 2. I came to be number 1. And in doing that, God prepared me to that dirty work. If I'll trust him while I'm eating peanut butter sandwich, and I'll trust him while I'm living in a car for 2 years, and I'll get these wins, but I'll still know, 1, who gave it to me, 2, what to do with it, 3, how to build my character, and also know that, God gave me these wins and I have to build on them so I can accept leveling up. That's the thing. Through the dirty work, not only does God prepare you for ruling the kingdom that he puts you in, so to speak, but he prepares you for accepting wins and saying, hey, God gave me this, and it's like a hit of, I got the win and now I'm going to build on it. So you're expecting wins. You're expecting to be number 1. You're expecting to go to the top. So there's so many things God teaches you through that dirty work. Like you said, my results are my fault, good and bad. So many people can't accept that. They'll say, oh, my family did this, or I did this, or the person at work's not helping me, or the bank shut down my loan, I can't get it. And they'll blame all these people. You say the buck stops and starts with me. And that's what God can use. You can't change 300 people, but you can change yourself. So that's a great point that you made.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And now, Jeff, can we go on to when you started to, now maybe you always had this in you, but if this might be a bit personal as well, and just let me know if you don't want to talk about it. But when you were living in your car, and then you talked about how now you wake up and you still have that same vision. The reason why you wake up at 5 a.m. is because, well, I have to do it at 4:30 a.m. in my car. So what was that transition like for you? How did you go from living in a car to taking extreme accountability and responsibility for everything that happens to you? And now, look at you now. How did that switch go?
It was just trusting God, and it was just a work ethic that would not be matched. You could not touch my work ethic. You could not touch my faith. And I heard so many people tell me, look, Jeff, it's been 6 months. Look, Jeff, it's been a year. Look, it's been a year and a half. Look, it's been 2 years. Look, if, it would have happened by now. And I said, faith of a mustard seed's all I need. So I kept pushing and I kept pushing. And as I was pushing, I would give myself, grace of, okay, Jeff, you're going to get there. But also every day I would say, today's the day I get out of the car. Today's the day I get out of the car. Today's the day I get out of the car. And that day came, and it was the day I got out of the car. So I kept pushing until I leveled up, until I could get they had where you could rent a room in somebody's house, like an Airbnb type thing. So I got enough until I saved up that. I got that. And then that let me say, okay, I don't have to go 50 places. Because if you've ever lived in a car, the thing about it that sucks is if you have to pee, if you have to use the bathroom, you got to go find somewhere. If you got to shave, if you got to shower, you got to go find somewhere. If you want food, you got to go find somewhere, because you can keep peanut butter in the car, but nothing else. So everything is constant, a waste of my time. Little simple things like you walk into the bathroom to go pee, you can't do in a car. You know what I'm saying? Little things like going to heat up your coffee or your food, you can't do in a car. So everything was so time consuming. So the biggest switch was, it was faith to keep going, a work ethic to keep pushing. And I got really good at using these pockets of time, because I'm like, oh, that used to take me an hour to go drive across town to do. Now I have a house, I can go do it in 5 minutes. So it was kind of that dedication, that discipline. And like I said, with, getting up, a lot of my friends, when they ask me for help, like, oh, you're a coach, I need help. I'll say, all right, get up at 5, because nobody bothers you and you can get those 2 hours in for you. I can't get up at 5. That's too early. I don't go to bed till 11. Well, who goes to bed at 11? You. Well, the same person goes to bed at 11 can get out of bed at 5. So it was just that constant faith in God, and that constant, I got to take my foot out of my butt, because I'm very driven, because I take it seriously. So it was just that constant faith and that constant drive to keep going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I love it. One thing that I do like what you say about that is the awareness of time that you have. Now, something that I really like is having time pressure. Time pressure, I think, is a very valuable thing, and it takes a lot of awareness to actually understand the time that you're investing into certain things. So when I think about, you said that we take for granted even going to the toilet living in a house. Now, when you think about going to the toilet for you, it could take you an hour to just find a toilet. But for me, when I'm living in a house, it takes 2 seconds. Right. We're thinking about the return on investment. Well, eventually you got to go. And for all the other times where you've held it in, you're saving it up for that one time. And what I want to go on to this point is, in the Sculpted app, we have a feature that, now the Sculpted app is not developed yet. It's just a prototype, but I've designed it so that we have a feature called time pressure. And I really use time pressure to keep me accountable, if that makes sense. So I have, on my phone, I have a little feature that tells me how long is left during the day. I also have another tracker that tells me how long I've got of this year. I also have another tracker that is a little bit doom and gloom, but it tells me how long I've got left to live, essentially, off an estimation. And one thing for me is a driving power for taking action is time pressure. When you take your time for granted, you start to have less of a sense of, I need to act. And what's really important for me is acting, because even to what we were talking about before is how could I not do this when God has given me such a blessing? And these types of things, do you find that, and we spoke about this a little bit, do you find that the time that you have and that you use is being, if we're talking about return on investment, how do you spend your time most wisely so that you get a return on your investment, the investment being your time?
I treat every day like I'm on a game show. Like if I was on The Apprentice with Donald Trump, or if I was on this game show where you win $10 million at the end of the day, I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? My friend, because I quit drinking, I quit all that. I got obsessed with my dream. So my friends are like, oh, let's go out. I'm like, I don't drink. And they're like, well, just come out and have water. I go, why am I going to a bar? You know what I'm saying? Why am I doing this? Well, I go, no, why would I go to a bar? I'll go read a personal development book for an hour. So it made me value of, why am I doing everything? Why am I doing this? And not to the point where I'm like crazy, but I'm like, okay, if I'm hopping on this phone call, why am I doing that? If I'm doing on this podcast, why am I doing this? If I'm doing this Instagram Live, why am I doing this? If I'm going to the gym, why am I doing this? Everything has to be that ROI, because we're not promised tomorrow. And like you and I, people are like, oh, well, he moved at 15 and this guy lived in a car, because we're obsessed about what God told us that we're going to do and the dream he gave us and the vision he gave us. So we don't have time to play around. I want to be the top coach yesterday. So it's just that constant. Every day is the last second of the fourth quarter for me. I said, because too many people wait. They wait till they're about to get evicted. They wait till they are almost at death's door in the hospital. They wait till something happens major in their life. And they're like, oh, now I'm going to take life seriously. I'm going to go after my dreams. Why the heck would you wait? Go now. If you can use that, like you talk about that time pressure, if you ever look like the last 3 seconds of the fourth quarter in basketball, in anywhere, like it's everybody's going crazy, giving their ultimate best. Well, why don't they do that the whole game? Why don't you do that all of life? So it's that time pressure of like, I don't know if tomorrow's coming, but I am. You know what I'm saying? And I'm pushing forward and I'm giving my all right now, because I learned if you can live, I don't want to say desperation, but if you can live with that hunger and that focus of that last shot at the fourth quarter on everything you do you know how dangerous and how amazing you can become?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it's that hyper awareness. I think the hyper awareness comes through. It doesn't come naturally. You don't realize that the time that you invest into, for example, this podcast right now, I see such a high ROI on it. Not just because it's my podcast, but because of the conversations that we have. The reason why I think this podcast is so brilliant for me is because the ROI it has for me. The ROI I have for walking, for example, it might be low, but if I need to walk to get where I want to go, then the ROI is increased. If we think about the wealthiest of the wealthiest, the reason why Tim Grover takes a jet to, some of the events that he has to go to, or people even get him, they might pay for his jet. I think recently he went to the Raiders, and you see this beautiful jet that him and Shari are going.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, that's crazy that either him or the Raiders have valued his time that much that to get in front of him, it would be, okay, they would rather save 4 hours of travel time than invest a few hundred, maybe, a few $50,000 into saving that time. So it's amazing to see the time of people and the ROI on some people's time. And when I think about how we can invest and get to that point of, for Tim Grover to have maybe a minute of his time is worth $1,000, how do I get that to myself? Well, it comes through investing in myself. And when you think about how you get to speak with famous people, there's an app called Minette, which is by Patrick Bet-David. And he has this really cool app where you can speak to him, but he values his time for 1 minute, I think at around $500. And for 15 minutes, it's crazy. That's a lot of money just to speak to someone for 15 minutes. But actually, there's a reason for that. And that's because for every single minute that he isn't getting paid for, that means that you're not paid for, that means he's getting that amount of money, either in attention or literal money. And it's crazy to think about how do we get to that point. I think that it's through developing ourselves first, if that makes sense.
100%, because to get ROI, you have to have something to invest in. So we have, like for you to have ROI with all that, you had to step out of your house and leave your house at 15. I had to go say, all right, I'm going to, go after my dreams and goals. Oh, lived in a car. Okay. Got to keep pushing. So you have to have something, you have to become something to have ROI on.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a very good point. Now, the last part that I want to go into is talking about personal branding. Now, we kind of touched on it a little bit with the wrestling and things like that. Now, you use Instagram, and that's how I got in contact with you. How do you have an effective Instagram strategy, and also utilizing the algorithm and also just your personal brand in itself? How do you use that to maximize, say, your time?
So everybody runs to, and this is not a commercial for Instagram, but everybody runs to all these different apps. And what they don't see is the basis that Instagram set up is perfect. You have to know how to use it. So back in the day, before we had any connections, we would have to go outside of people's office buildings, flirt with the secretary, try to catch people at country clubs. Where do they eat? Where do they go? How do I bump into these people? That all changed the day Instagram came about, because people's front door has now become a DM box. And that's what so many people don't realize. They're like, well, they got 40 million followers. They'd never talk to me. They'd never do this, and that. If you didn't have Instagram, name the percentage of your chances. It'd be 0. It'd be like 0.1. So Instagram gave you every single person at your fingertips. Now you may say, well, they have people that run their pages and everything. Yes, but those people are within arm's length of that person you're trying to talk
First degree connections.
Yeah, first degree connections. So, and also if you're like, well, they don't respond to their DMs, but they see the comments, they're human beings. If they posted something on a human psychology level, they want feedback. They want to know what people think, no matter how competent they are. So you now have two different ways to access to them. You also get to study people. Before I sat with Tim Grover, this is a great example of why you should use Instagram when you're trying to manifest and go and get people and everything else. Before I ate dinner with Tim Grover, which took like over 1,000 days of building that relationship, I sat and watched thousands of hours of his videos, of this, of that. And they may say, why do you do that? Because I said, I'm going to meet Tim Grover, but I don't want to be so nervous that I get like, I can't say nothing, nothing else. So I sat down mentally with him for thousands of hours. So when I sat down physically with him, it was like my best friend. I made that choice. But how did I do that? I used Instagram. Well, what do you mean? Every day they're posting videos of themselves. Every day they're posting pictures. Every day they're posting what they believe in, what their pillars are. Instagram has given you a platform to learn the people you're trying to connect with. And in doing that, you have that chance to connect with them. But the biggest piece of advice I can give you is connecting with them. So many people will go to those level up connections with a handout. Don't do that. Everybody's asking those people for money, for connections, they got the greatest idea, this and that. If you want to sit at the table with successful people, bring your own share, meaning bring something to the table with that connection. Maybe it's ways that you can help them. Maybe it's, hey, thank you, this changed my life. Can I do a testimony about you? There's all these different ways that you can come at somebody different to show them appreciation, because when you bring your chair to the success table, you don't have to leave with that person if they leave. It's not, I'm there plus one. You're there by yourself. So in the social media brand and everything, though, is what I do is I say, okay, so I can learn what they pay hundreds of millions of dollars for marketing and advertising for. Why? Because the recipe's right in front of me. So if I want to be the top speaker, what does the top speaker do? Well, there's their blueprint. The same way Arnold Schwarzenegger got Reg Park's blueprint, you can go and get anybody's blueprint that you want. It's right there in front of you on Instagram. And then you can talk to them, like I said, in the DMs. You can talk to them in the comments. You can learn so much. But then as far as strategy, sorry, it's like a lot of stuff. But with strategy, it's just, okay, now look at how many customers you can reach. Do you know if you got in your car or if you went and walked, if you said, I'm going to talk to 100 people today, do you know that you couldn't do that in a day? There's no way. You couldn't. But now you can do it. You can go in people's DMs. You can go in people's comments. You can just, connect with them. You can talk with them. So how can you not want to be an entrepreneur nowadays when this one platform of Instagram put all these level up people in front of you, all these potential customers, all these ways to know the algorithms, the stories, the hashtags, the posts, the copy, the this, the that? How could you not go crazy and level up with that? So that's kind of what Instagram has done to me. But you said like a strategy. Sorry, I got a little course. You saw like a strategy, or
if you don't mind me even adding to this, I think that for me, something that I speak about a lot with my co-host, and it's an interesting story in itself. So I had originally a co-host from England, and then he left. Well, he did his own thing, and then I got a new co-host. I didn't meet the co-host in person until our first episode, and then the newest co-host I still haven't met, and this is because of LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn for me has been your Instagram, essentially. For me, the reason why I've been able to make the moving to Germany at the age of 15, and again, now, of course, my faith, but the reason as well why I've been able to trust in that faith is because I've done the due diligence to make sure that I can trust in the plan. And for me on LinkedIn, I think I'm almost at 20,000 followers today. I think
wow,
nine.
Congratulations, that's big. Congratulations, that's big. That is so huge.
That's something that I've worked on non-stop, and that has gotten me to every single football team that I have played for. So every single football team that I've played for has been because of LinkedIn. Now, that I think is your Instagram, and I think that's very important. Now, I had a phone call with someone recently who's also a friend of Tim Grover's. Now, I won't mention his name, but he gave me some very good advice to what you also said, is that you have to bring something to the table. Now, bringing something to the table has to be valuable. Now, this guy, he did that actually to Tim Grover, which was very interesting and a coincidence in itself, right? He is a owner of a football club in the UK, and he got relentless to a famous football player in England, and then he sent that testimonial to Tim.
Oh,
You might know
it. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and exactly to the point. Now they're good friends, and he gave something of value to Tim. And now, just recently, he had a phone call with Tim and his team because his team wasn't doing so well. And that's bringing value to the table to get in front of these people, which is what you were saying is a very important thing.
Right. And you're able, and LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, it's like that platform is there. I told you I was born in 83. Like that, I couldn't imagine having that back then.
Yeah.
But if you can take that old school work ethic and put it with today's technology, you could be unstoppable.
Yeah. 100%. And for me, I think that I was very fortunate to be introduced to LinkedIn at such a young age. Not many people. I think I started LinkedIn at 14. And I was very, it's a crazy way that it happened. I was in a car on my way home from training, and one of the players who I was in the car with, he just told me about it. And I was like, you know what? I've got nothing to lose here. And there hasn't been more than a week where I haven't posted more than 3 posts or videos. And it's been nonstop, and it's been very, very slow growth because on LinkedIn, unless you're famous, you don't really get growth there. Often it's you reaching out to people. But that's how I've done it, and that's how I think you've also done it yourself.
Yeah. I used to send video message when I lived in the car. It was so funny. I used to have to hurry up and do it because I'd come out of the gym after working out, and I'd have to turn the air off because the air makes too much noise. And it was Florida, so you're talking 90 degrees by like 3 o'clock. And I mean, I got a bald head, so I'm pouring sweat. So I had to get so good at making video messages to like 7 people. I had it be instantaneous because the sweat was going to start pouring. My shirt was going to get soaked because I had no air on. And that's how I did it. Just in everybody's DMs with a video message. Hey, this is Jeff Vulpis. Love what you do about your brand. Bam, bam, bam. You inspire me with this. Bam, bam, bam. Love to talk to you sometime. Thank you. Have a great day. Bam.
Love it. Yeah.
And that got Gabrielle Reese, that got Elena Cardone, that got all these different people that I screenshotted and showed.
Wow.
I mean, that's how it happened with Tim too. I got in his DMs and he was gracious enough to start talking to me, and that built the relationship. You never know what a message will bring. Will it bring rejection? It can, but it can also bring a whole new world to you. You can't be scared of rejection.
Yeah. Very powerful. Very powerful. Now, I'm aware of time, so I want to wrap it up with the last question, which is the closing question. Now, I do have closing questions themselves, although I think we've covered a lot. And also, I actually have another episode that I have to record immediately after this. So,
okay,
with the closing question, 3 ways that you sculpt yourself on a daily basis. And I'm assuming that you're familiar with the word sculpting. So what are the 3 ways that you sculpt yourself on a daily basis?
My faith, my mindset, my fitness.
That was the quickest answer we've ever had. That was brilliant. And that wraps it up, because literally what we've been speaking about, faith, we talked about the fitness and all of those things. So faith, mindset, fitness, and what was the last one?
Faith, fitness, and mindset.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Words. No, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that a lot. And when I think about that for myself, what do I keep close to me? My faith. What do I work on every single day? My mindset. What do I also work on every single day? My fitness. And something that sculpted is 3 pillars, right? For me, it's this. It's not just the 3 things that I try and do every single day. It's the 3 things that I also act every single day. So for me, my listeners are probably so annoyed with how often I say this, but I say it all the time because it's so important to me, and it's so important to who I am, and it's my professionalism, dedication, and effort. And there's also 3 things for the way that I act as a footballer and the way that I play as a footballer. There's also 3 things that I pride myself on the way that I act with like family and friends. There's also 3 things that I also act as with faith. So I try and be as in the biblical terms, the fruits of the spirit: goodness, joyfulness, and faithfulness. These are the 3 things that I pride myself on. So for me, the sculpted logo is an embodiment of 3 things, and that's why even it's what are the 3 ways that you sculpt yourself. Now, you might not have 3 ways that you try and act or do this way or that way, but this is something that I'm trying to bring to a reality. Even in the sculpted app, is I have a feature called the compass, and I was speaking to my dad about this before, and I was saying how the compass is it just keeps you in alignment with where you want to go. When you're reflecting on how you stayed in alignment with your 3 things every single day, this is pushing you and keeping you in alignment with where you want to go. This is your North Star. This is your compass. And I think it's such an important thing that not many people talk about. And it's something that I really want to bring to the Sculpted app so that more people can talk about it.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I think we have to end it there because we could go all day, and unfortunately we don't have all day. But thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
It was an amazing episode, and honestly, I think that we could get you on another episode sometime soon if you're keen. Because
I would love to.
We've got so much to talk about, and also my co-host, I'm sure that he would also like to hop on. He's actually just finishing training right now, so he plays football in Greece. And yeah, he's unfortunately not able to join today, but we'd love to have you on another episode because there's so much value in here. So again, thank you so much for your time today. And yeah, it was amazing.
Thank you. I was very honored to be here, and I love your show and everything you're doing, man. And I value our friendship.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it a lot.
You're welcome.